Welcome to Richmond Hill High School's Emerge.
Sorry. First of all, welcome to our event. My name is Julia and I'm your MC for tonight. And now, as you probably already know, this afternoon we are featuring 4 amazing student speakers who have worked extremely hard to share their ideas with us today. And in addition to that, we have a short intermission featuring the best event food that you will ever taste. But before we launch into our event, I would like to take us through a small activity to, let's say, prepare ourselves. I want you to think about the things you do on a day-to-day basis. Now I'm going to put this on the screen and let's hope that this is what it looks like. Let's start with something that we all have in common: school. Especially since it's summative season and we are currently all succeeding in life and exams are coming way too soon, we spend 8 hours every weekday here to build on our academic foundations. I think we can all agree that it takes up a lot of our time and energy. But at school, we don't just learn, we spend time with friends. Spending time with these like-minded people helps us create a close community and helps us create the fondest high school memories. But of course, with friends, there's also family. You come home to a sheltered house every day. They've watched you grow up, and they will continue to do so. So these are all extremely important aspects, but as a high schooler in current society, the biggest difference from a high schooler, let's say 2 decades ago, is that right now we all have a lot of extracurriculars. You might be involved in a sport. You might have an artistic talent. You might be volunteering or have a job. And these are all things that make us active, that motivate us, that make us unique. So, as you can see from this picture, our high school lives are actually pretty busy. And think about it, everything you do every day is to improve one of these aspects. So if you do that, how much time do you actually have for yourself? Or rather, when you do have time for yourself, how much of that time do you use to spend on listening to others and reflecting on your own life? And that's why this afternoon exists. We are here for you to listen to some of the greatest stories that our school has to offer, reflect on them, and apply them to your lives. We are here for you to emerge out of all these different aspects, wipe them away from your mind, and enjoy the afternoon. Please welcome our first speaker, Mark Zhang.
My name is Mark, and today I'm going to talk about a topic that's quite strange, and the theory is called simulation theory. And our topic we're going to explore today is real or not. Right? Wait, where's my clicker? Okay. Guys, where's my clicker? Julia. Clicker. Real or not, we're back. Okay. So, before anything, let me take you through. Okay, this doesn't work. Okay, so let's look at this painting. So it was painted around like 300 BC. Well, it's painted for a guy that's 300 BC. His name is Zhuangzi, and he once had a dream that he was a butterfly. Right? And he woke up and he asked the question, am I now a human dreaming that I'm a butterfly, or am I a butterfly dreaming that I'm a human? So, that is precisely the topic that we're going to explore today. So, we're gonna ask ourselves the question: how do you know what you see is real? How do you know that your interpretation is reality? So, first question, are you real? Well, quite frankly, this is a question that's very hard to answer. Like, how do I know if I'm real? Well, I mean, like, I'm physical, I'm standing here, I feel like I'm real, but just like when you're dreaming, unless you're a lucid dreamer, you feel like it's real. You're dreaming about something like last night, I was dreaming that I was in Salt Lake City or something. I was like doing something there. But when I was dreaming, I didn't know what was real or not, right? So, and with the emergence of technology, with stronger and stronger GPUs, stronger and stronger computers, more real and real virtual realities, we really kind of start blending reality and virtual things together, right? So I don't know if you watch Rick and Morty, you know. So they had a very interesting episode on simulation theory, and this theory proposed that we are actually being simulated, right? And what that means is we're kind of like playing a video game. You know how when you play a game, they're like frames per second. So essentially, what you see is what you render. So basically, your reality only exists with the perspective that you see. So what that means is when let's say you play Minecraft, right? You're looking at this place and there's a big mountain. Wow, there's a great mountain. But if you look away, that mountain disappears. So in order to conserve computational power as a software developer, you wouldn't want to render what the player can't see at the back, right? And you can kind of apply that to our life. Like you don't know if what you don't see behind you is actually real. What if right now you're wearing a really advanced, technologically advanced like virtual reality in the future, and maybe you're now just playing a game, right? It's really hard to know. Either there's an exit button, maybe death is the only option for you to exit this game, and maybe you wake up from another place and you feel like, oh, okay, I just finished playing another game. But that's just a thought experiment, and you might ask, okay, Mark, do you have like some correlations with some actual scientific evidence that is real? Obviously, I don't, but I do have a correlation that I just thought of when I was like 2 a.m. in the morning. I was just lying in my bed and I just feel like, I read this topic about quantum mechanics. There's something called superposition. There's a theory called superposition principle. What that means is, imagine, well, in a nutshell, obviously, imagine you have a ball, right? It's a ball that has a number on it. And whenever you look at the ball, let's say the first time you look at it, it's 4, and you look away, and you look at it again, it's 3. And then because again, it changed number. So what this means that your observation has some sort of a physical effect on a physical object that you hold. And you might think this is fiction, but it's not. It's all of these quantum mechanics that are actually proven to be real. And in fact, that's how we have quantum computers, why they're so fast. Because things are all have a probabilistic distribution of waves. So basically what that means in simple terms is you don't know what it physically is until you look at it. And doesn't that sound quite similar to the idea that we're playing a game where things only start to be generating until you actually look at it, right? So that is like a vague correlation that I found that can link, well, the quantum mechanics, like the actual physical proven theories, and this wild theory that people have proposed and I have thought of. So there are multiple hypotheses that I came up with. Obviously the first one and the most famous one is called Ancestor Simulation. So what is Ancestor Simulation, you ask? Ancestor Simulation is essentially saying that we are living in a simulation where we are the product of future humanities. Maybe after billions of years later, Earth got destroyed in multiple meteorites and nuclear war, and the entire Earth got destroyed, and future human race realized, I wonder what our ancestors look like. And we have enough computational power. Why don't we create a replica of our reality, right? Given input all of the mathematical and physical constants like pi and e and the big G, and we created a perfectly virtual world of reality. And that's the first hypothesis that I think we could be in. And the next one is that quite literally, life could be a game. Maybe we're like the very advanced version of Grand Theft Auto, where Grand Theft Auto is like 1 billion, version 1 billion. And
May I get one of the staff from room
and or like SimCity, right? So in that case, that means there could be people in our world that are NPCs. Maybe I'm an NPC. Maybe you're looking at me, and I'm just a simulated non-player character in your game. It's like when you play like a role-playing game, they're just like random bots running around. Maybe I'm one of them right now. Maybe you look around and how do you know, right? How do you know if everyone around you are real? You don't. Quite frankly, you don't know if anyone is real, or even if yourself is real. And that's one possibility. And the next one, well actually, we'll go back one second. Actually, and if you think I'm not convincing enough, maybe you think there's no way that what I see are fake. It's definitely real because I think therefore I am. And maybe because it just seems so real to me, and so it must be real. So let me show you this clip that is released by Google recently in their Google I/O. They created this technology called Google Duplex, where a computer, like an AI, tries to pretend to be a human and talk to a restaurant owner to make a reservation. So this is the left side is the Google. So this person.
Hey, how many are you?
Hi, I'd like to reserve a table for Wednesday the 7th.
It's completely computer generated.
7 people?
It's for 4 people.
4 people when?
Next Wednesday at 6 p.m.
Oh, actually we need to for like after like 5 people. For people you can come.
How long is the wait usually to be seated?
When tomorrow or weekday or?
For next Wednesday, the 7th.
Oh no, it's not too busy. You can come for 4 people, okay?
Oh, I gotcha. Thanks.
See how it has the very natural sounding like the pauses that we naturally make, and it is able to adapt to the situation where, oh, what if you can't reserve and you can just come, right? So honestly, this kind of scared me that day. I was watching it, I was like, holy damn, this sounds more real than me. And how do I know one day if like a scammer calls me and I feel like it's actually a real person? I wouldn't know that, right? That is a big concern. But if you apply it to our case, what if people that are talking to you are using the same technology that's in the future? So the last case obviously is that we're real, that things that we observe around us, we're very fortunate to be the only real, genuine humanity to be ever existed in this universe. But I do feel like this is very unlikely. Why? Because if I'm able to create a simulation, that simulation will try to create another simulation, and that simulation will create more simulation, and this is just like infinitely nested amount of simulations that will just go forever. So which one's more likely? One single genuine reality or a near infinite amount of simulated reality? Well, statistically speaking, the latter one, right? So just to end this off, I hope today I gave you a new perspective as to how you see the world around you. And still from Zhuangzi, and I'll read it for you. So only after the great awakening will we realize that this is the great dream. And yet fools think they are awake, presuming to know that they are rulers or herdsmen. How dense. So, well, this guy he said this quote 300 BC, before he even knew that computers are coming up, before he even see virtual realities. So this just shows how simulation theory is not a concept, it's not even a modern concept, it's a concept that we as humanity have thought thousands of years ago, and it is something that I feel like is an idea worth spreading. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Next, we will be having Matthew Au. Yes, we will be having Matthew Au.
I'm here to tell you a story. A story about a loving old man and his anally expulsive grandson whose existence could be described by a single word for the first 15 years of his life: ignorance. Our story starts with a couple, Thomas and Laura. Thomas was an organized and intelligent man who had great control over social settings, whereas Laura was a hardworking but retentive woman who had a great control over her husband. They loved each other, I hope, and in the year 2000, they moved to Canada, settled down, had a child. That was not me, that was my sister. They called her Julia. Then, 2 years later, after learning the basics of childcare, they decided, hey, this isn't so bad, let's have another one. And thus, on January 30th, 2002, a boy was born in the North York General Hospital. That was me. By the time I was born, my parents had only just moved to Canada, so they'd only started making enough to support their family. They worked 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, and sometimes they even filled their extra time with part-time shifts. And this also meant that there was no one home to take care of me. So my mom thought it would be a good idea to call her parents over from China, and from that point on, it would be my grandparents who took care of me during my infancy. Ever since my grandpa first held me in his arms, I've become his most treasured grandchild. This is also in part because of his traditional Chinese values and the fact that I was the only boy among his descendants, but that's kind of sexist, so let's just say that I was naturally cuter than my sister. My grandpa basically raised me. He dressed me up in the morning and tucked me away at night. He fed me on a regular basis, and when it was warm out, he would take me to the park every evening, and when the ice cream truck came around, even though my parents told him not to, he'd always just buy me a cone. When my parents weren't home, when they were out at work, my grandpa would constantly be watching over my every move to keep me safe. However, see, I want to tell you that I have many fond memories of my grandpa, but the truth is, most of what I just told you, I learned from my parents. See, when he took care of me, I physically wasn't old enough to remember these experiences. I was only a toddler at most. But even as I started to grow older, what I never quite grasped was how much effort it took for my grandpa to do everything that he did for me. See, for instance, there was this one specific dish of pork that he cooked for me on a near daily basis. It was delicious, I loved it. But I never realized that every time I opened my mouth, crying for juicy pig meat, as I put it, there was this entire process called taking the meat out of the fridge, washing it, chopping it into bite-sized pieces, placing those pieces into the pot, going back to the fridge, oh wait, no, before that, pouring in a liter of water, going back to the fridge and grabbing carrots, potatoes, and onions, chopping those up into bite-sized pieces, adding those to the pot, turning the lid back on, turning up the heat. You get the idea. See, this entire process of actually making the pork was completely irrelevant in my mind, yet my grandpa did this for me pretty much every day. The pork is only one example of my ignorance to my grandpa's life. When I was small, while he used to take me out to the park in a stroller, as I grew older, I no longer needed it, so I skipped down the road on my own. Never once did I look back to see my grandpa struggling to catch up on a cane and a permanently injured leg. See, given the same chance, or given the same choice, I would much rather not look after a kid as annoying as I was, yet my grandpa did that for me on a daily basis as well. Years passed, and as I grew older, I grew distant. My grandpa never stopped caring for me, but eventually I saw it as nothing more than a nuisance. He came to wake me up in the morning for school, and I just got extremely annoyed. I brushed him off every time he handed me an extra sweater and shut the door before he could wish me goodnight. Things developed to a point where, as he flew between Canada and China, I literally looked forward to the time where he went back, so there wouldn't be someone constantly nagging me about whether or not I was hungry every afternoon. It wouldn't be a stretch to say that by the time I was in second grade, Pokemon literally ranked higher in my list of life values than my grandpa did. And that's remarkable considering how much my grandpa did for me. And considering the fact that that was the same year my grandpa was diagnosed with lung cancer. My grandpa used to be a heavy smoker. He picked up cigarettes in his 20s but never quite put them down 50 years later. But to be honest, I didn't even notice when he stopped smoking because of cancer. For the longest time, things stayed the same. Nothing changed until 6 years later. 2 years ago, my grandpa became bedridden. November 21st, 2016. That hit me like a truck. I mean, how could it not? For my entire life, my grandpa had been able to walk perfectly fine. or as fine as an old man with an injured leg possibly could, but there he was, lying in bed for longer than anyone in my family had hoped for or even expected. At first I thought maybe he was gonna get up after a day or two. Maybe he was just more tired than usual, but as hours became days and days became weeks, that day I hoped for never came. When I finally realized that my grandpa would never get back up on his own again, that's when my naive world was brutally shattered. That's when I finally understood what time meant. But by then, 15 years were long gone. That was time that I would never get back. 1 month later, my parents decided to bring him to a hospice. After that, I started to visit him regularly, but to be honest, I don't even know why I did it. I didn't know whether I was doing it out of guilt and obligation or out of actual love for Grandpa. But see, by then it didn't matter because the only thing that was clear to me was that if I didn't, I would never get the chance to anymore. What impressed me was there was this entire room just designated to my grandpa. And he had this remote control adjustable chair. He had his own bathroom, his own microwave, anything he could ask for basically. But see, all I really remember doing that day was sitting down next to him and holding his hand, just to let him know that he wasn't alone. By then it was difficult for him not to feel alone. See, his vocal cords were damaged to the point where he could barely speak. His eyes were almost blind. Even breathing became a mortal difficulty for him. Imagine all of that combined with the knowledge that you're about to die. That any minute now, you're going to close your eyes and never be able to open them again. That's what my grandpa was going through. I could physically feel how tightly he was clinging on to time. See, every 20 seconds as I sat there, my grandpa would look at me and he would ask me for the time. Matthew, what time is it? I'd look at the clock and I'd read out the exact hour and minute. It's 10:03 p.m., I would say. He would sit back as though relaxed and satisfied, but 20 seconds later, the same question came again. Matthew, what time is it? And the time wouldn't change. It was only 20 seconds. I would say the same thing, 10:03 p.m. See, by that point, my grandpa was literally clinging on to life. And just like how my grandpa once took care of me, I started to change his diapers and put food on his table. It was not until the tables turned that I realized how ignorant I'd been. For 15 years, I'd been blanketed in comfort and spoon-fed security. For 15 years, I've been receiving his love in a bottomless glass. Weeks later, I found myself sitting next to my grandpa once again. This time, as I tuned into the ticking of the second hand once more, I felt a fierce emotion build up inside of me. It was this growing knot of love and fear tangled with gratitude and regret. As it built up my chest, I found it increasingly difficult to breathe. It choked me in its magnitude. I tried to stop my feelings out of fright, but the ticking never waited a second. I realized it was now or never. And for the first time in my life, I took a step forward on my own 2 feet. Grandpa, I love you. My grandfather passed away just last year, January 23rd, 2017. Weeks prior to this, I would have been terrified of this day's arrival, but by then, I wasn't the same person I used to be. See, I was always aware of my love for Grandpa, but I just never found the strength to put that love into words. And when that changed, my world was fundamentally altered. I learned to smile in the face of adversity, and I stopped receiving my loved ones' efforts secondhand. I realized that the food in my stomach and the roof over my head were just birthrights. These were the results of my parents' hard work, and I was the fruit of conscious love. I'd avoided acknowledging my grandpa's love for so long that when I finally did it, it became almost impossible to openly reciprocate his feelings. It took me not just 1 or 2 days, but weeks to build up the courage to say a simple, I love you. I'm just glad that I did it before it was too late, because sometimes 3 words can change a life. And for my grandpa, 3 words meant a happy ending. Thank you.
Now, it's interesting. I walk here and I see hungry faces. We'll be having our intermission right now. We have cake, chips, pop, and Momo's bubble tea. We thank Momo's for sponsoring our event. And also we understand it's Ramadan right now, so if you have any adjustments that need to be made, please let us know. We'd be happy to do that for you. Intermission's over there. Thank you. Okay, we're going to restart this. Now we will have our next speaker. Please welcome Alicia Zhang.
If you attend Richmond Hill High School, then you have definitely had many terrible interactions with traffic. Whether it's walking to school in the morning and almost getting run over by a car, or being in a car that's about to run someone else over. Traffic sucks, because people are not the best at driving, or urban planning, or road construction, or understanding traffic in general, or anticipating possible changes that come with new technology. And that's why people are starting to develop a new solution that removes humans from the equation. Self-driving cars. Self-driving cars are super cool. So let's look at the current state of self-driving cars. Several very large companies such as Uber, Google, Tesla, and General Motors have already started to develop many advanced self-driving cars. As of right now, there are thousands of self-driving cars being tested on the road in major cities such as Pittsburgh and Phoenix. So self-driving cars have definitely come a long way since 2004, when there was this race of self-driving cars, and the goal was to get across this course of 240 kilometers. There were 15 cars in the race, and none of them finished the course. The car that got the furthest only went 11.4 kilometers before it got stuck on a rock and its front wheels caught on fire. But thankfully, it's 2018, self-driving cars are now about as good as the average human. In fact, they're even better than the average human in some respects. For example, their reflexes are thousands of times faster than human reflexes, and their snap judgment also tends to be more accurate. However, self-driving cars are not quite perfect yet, because they are, for example, easily distracted and easily confused by things such as snow. Its sensors aren't really good at detecting snow yet. And since we live in Canada, that makes them limited in their abilities for about half of the year. Self-driving cars are also easily confused by things like plastic bags, roadkill, fallen trees, and hurricanes. You know, things you don't really see every day. But despite these small technological problems that self-driving cars have, I think that the really big problems will be about societal integration. Because people don't want their robot cars to be about as good as the average human. Because the average human is pretty terrible at driving. People want their self-driving cars to be nearly perfect. So what would the world look like when self-driving cars have replaced traditional cars? First, driving safety. People are really terrible drivers. They don't stop at stop signs. They don't use their turn signals. They text while driving. I have even seen people do their makeup while driving, which can't be good for their safety or for their makeup. 1.3 million people die each year because of car accidents. That's an average of 3,287 people every day. And if self-driving cars can reduce that number by even a fraction, that's a lot of lives saved. And self-driving cars will be far better drivers than humans because they will never get bored, distracted, or drunk. Self-driving cars are far more reliable, and because they run on a program, these programs can have backup plans in place. Second, congestion and traffic efficiency. So, you know when you're at an intersection and you have to stop for the red light, even there are no other cars going the other way and you're just sort of stuck there? Or those cars who insist on changing lanes every 30 seconds because they think the other lane is going faster, but really they're just slowing everybody down. This kind of thing will never happen with self-driving cars, because self-driving cars won't be acting individually as a single unit. They'll be constantly communicating with the thousands of other vehicles around it, acting in a seamless, continuous loop of cars. This makes behaviors such as platooning possible. So So platooning is basically when a group of cars travel very, very closely together at very high speeds. They stop and start at exactly the same time. This has the potential to increase traffic capacity by up to 500% because cars can travel so much more closely together when they're communicating together. This means that people can get to where they're going much, much faster because more cars can just fit on the road. And third, the mental burden of driving. So most people think driving is just, something you do every day, something that people just do because they have to, but really it's a series of very complex interactions with your environment. You're constantly processing information and you're constantly making thousands of small decisions in a very short amount of time. And this means that people who have long commutes to work, they often have an increased levels of frustration and increased levels of stress. But with self-driving cars, people can exercise in their cars, they can do yoga in their cars, they can sleep in their cars. This looks like a very, very comfortable car to sleep in. And when people don't have to have this mental burden of having to drive everywhere, they can use their mental energy for so many better things. This ties into my next point, 4, about free time while driving. So we think that when people the average person drives 2 hours every single day. That's a lot of time that can be used for a lot of different things. Like, say you're a business person, and you wake up in the morning and you have a really important financial report due, and your boss is like, hand it in to me first thing this morning. And you're like, well, I didn't work on it yesterday, but it's okay. You have the 45 minutes on the way to work in your self-driving car to finish up your report. And if traffic is really bad, you have 55 minutes. Oh wait, no, traffic won't be bad because self-driving cars are amazing. Free time also provides us with more social opportunities. For example, dating apps on self-driving cars. So this might not make a lot of sense at first, but please let me explain. So when you have self-driving cars, the car can drive itself, so it doesn't need to be parked nearby. It can just drop you off at school and then go and drive someone else. This means that people are less likely to own their own cars because that's more expensive and inconvenient than just hailing an Uber that happens to be self-driving. And Uber has this option where you can choose to carpool with people. So it can put you in the same car as a bunch of other people who are going in the same direction as you. And this means that dating apps on self-driving cars can put you in the same carpool as other people who have the same interests as you and are going in the same direction as you. This means, and it's not just dating apps. People can also have book clubs and chess clubs in the car. The point is, it's a lot better than having to drive. This brings me to my next point, 5. 5, urban planning. So we live in the suburbs. I kind of hate it because A, I hate walking, right? And like, even though we have buses, I don't want to walk to the bus stop. And B, I am navigationally challenged. I cannot read maps. And when you're in the suburbs, it's all loop-de-loops and cul-de-sacs and I never know where I'm going. But with self-driving cars, I won't have to use public transit because I'll just be in the self-driving car. Or self-driving cars could even increase use of public transit by being a first mile, last mile measure. Like, for example, if you need to get to a train station, the self-driving car can take you to the nearest train station. You can go on a train ride across the country or something, and then a self-driving car can take you to your final destination. Because reducing the need to walk makes it far more likely that people will even consider taking the train in the first place. Additionally, self-driving cars can solve the problem of traffic, because with the ride-share option, if, say, everybody doesn't own a car and instead they choose to have self-driving Ubers, cars will be active for far more of the day, because as of right now, cars are only used for about 5% of the day. But with self-driving cars, that could bring this number up to 15 or even 20%. And when more people are on self-driving cars, there are less self-driving cars being parked. This means we could get rid of our parking lot and build more buildings or have more green space and more parks. I think that self-driving cars really offer us a new opportunity to look at our community and our societies and redesign them into ways that suit human needs, into ways that are more sustainable, livable, and comfortable, not just built around the idea of the car. So, 3 things to take away from my TED Talk. First, self-driving cars have the potential to fix a lot of things that are wrong with traffic today. Second, I am not a fortune teller. While I've tried to predict many of the changes that self-driving cars will bring, we really don't know what's going to happen yet. So we have to be careful with the rules and regulations we put in place to make sure that we get as many benefits as we can from self-driving cars. And three, if you can drive, please drive safely. Notice stop signs, use your turn signals, because self-driving cars
Alright, sit back down, sit back down. Okay, the reason that this works is because you're creating that sense of intimacy. And lastly, laughing. Now, I'm not gonna bore you with some really bad. Maybe one of these tips, and hopefully you'll use it so that you can become a better person and you can overall help the community become better. Now, bringing it back to something more fun, it's called the swimming duck syndrome that I want to talk about. Except, it's not really fun. So, as you can see in this duck here, on the surface, it may seem calm, collected. If you've ever seen a duck swim, on the top, they're fine, right? But if you look underwater, their feet are actually scampering as hard as they can to keep them afloat, as well as to keep them moving. And this is in relation to students. Some students have this as well. On the surface, they may seem calm, collected, and cool, but underneath, they're struggling with work, it could be with homework, or just struggling in general themselves by things you can't see. And this actually leads to something else that's detrimental. People stop paddling, they stop working as hard. Now, this comes from the fact that other people may, if a duck does seem like it's struggling really hard and it's paddling really hard, they may seem like they're not such a great duck. They're not as strong as other ducks, right? And that kind of translates into what students feel. If someone works their butt off on an assignment and they just to get a good mark, they may seem dumber than someone else who didn't try at all and got the same mark. So people just stop trying. But the worst reason of why they stop trying is because if they do pour their heart and soul into this assignment and they get really bad on it, they will be demotivated to try for a very, very long time. And what the takeaway of this swimming duck syndrome I want you to take is that trying isn't a bad thing. Trying is what leads to growth, it's what it leads to development, and it's what leads to us being the best versions of ourselves that we can be. This is what happens when you stop paddling. So, to every single one of you in the crowd, keep paddling. Now, after my speech, I actually want to hand off the mic to you, and you, and you, and everyone else in the crowd. Not physically, but metaphorically. Because every single one of us has the power and voice to create change. Now, I don't mean that in a cheesy way, but it is true that we can create change. If you talk to the person next to you, if you talk to someone new and get yourself into the community and envelop yourself, you can create a positive change in our community. Not just through the chemicals that I talked about earlier, but as well, it does create real impacts that improve not just your own life, but the life of the people around you. And I want to leave you all with a quote from one of my idols, Tommy Wiseau. If a lot of people love each other, the world will be a better place to live. Thank you.
Now I know that you know that this is the end of our event, and I'm going to try really hard to be brief, but I have one thing to say. I know that this event lasted for almost 2 hours, but all the event coordinators, we have spent the last 2 months trying to coordinate this. And I wanted to give a round of applause to all the event coordinators and speakers. And of course, we also want to thank our amazing supervisor, Ms. Glodon, for being the best teacher supervisor for our club. One more thing, if at the end of the year we do have, if you are interested in our club, we do have, please follow us on social media on Instagram and Facebook at RHHS TED Club. And finally, to thank every single one of you, we have bubble tea. So head on